Hello, fairy finders and fairy seekers. Welcome to FaerieQuest and the Ancestor readings. On the screen, you will see ancestor totems. All you need to do is choose one of the numbers underneath or choose a totem and go to the timestamp below for that numbered totem. This is a timeless reading. It is also a general reading, so it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all. But as all readings, chances are there's some pretty important information in there for everyone. So have fun with this.
Hello, Ancestor reading number 1. Those of you who chose, not sure if this is a foo dog, if this is a part lion, part dragon, part dog, not sure. But it was an ancestor look, I think. So for those of you who chose number 1, that is the symbology that your ancestor is using this time around. So we are going to do 2 layouts to have some conversation with your ancestor and find out some information. The first layout will be a kind of get to know you, and then the second layout will be more of why your ancestor is with you at this time. I've pulled 9 cards from each deck, and that is what we will be using. So let's get going here. I'll try to keep my hands out of things. So the first thing is to know whether your ancestor is male or female, the one that is closest to you at this time. And we're going to lay out 3 of the 9 cards here. We have the bouquet, we have the clover, and we have the mice. Okay. And what this is showing is that the bouquet, being the first card, is the Queen of Spades. So your ancestor is a female. And we don't necessarily need to know this, but it kind of makes the reading and the conversation a little easier if we have a he or she that we can work with. So the message also that comes with the fact that you have a female for an ancestor for this reading, she's probably like a godmother or a teacher, even a mentor from a life that you guys shared together. So she's saying, surprise, it took a little bit of luck, but she found you. She sounds like she's pretty fun. So then we need to know if she is from the maternal or paternal side of the family, mother's side or father's side. Okay. And we have the Tower. We have the Woman, which normally would depict you, and the Tree. And what this is showing is with the Woman card here, she's letting you know that she is from your mother's side, the maternal side of the family. And don't disregard the fact that depending on what information is given as to what time period she lived in and that kind of thing, we will be looking into that as well. But, you know, if you get an urge of perhaps knowing who this might be, as an ancestor, it's probably going to go back farther than you can remember, but you never know. So don't disregard any inklings that you get. So she's telling you in the first part, she's like, surprise, it took a little bit of luck, but she found you, okay, which was those top cards. And then in this one, she's saying she has the authority of Mother Nature. So she does have a sense of humor, I think. And I don't know anybody that could be stronger than Mother Nature, right? First thing that comes to mind when I hear those words is nobody fools Mother Nature. And that was a commercial. You might be too young for that, but that was a commercial. I believe it was a butter commercial. So it kind of makes sense when she says, surprise, with a little luck I found you. And then she's like, nobody fools Mother Nature. So yeah, she seems to have a good sense of humor. So the next thing we need to know is how she would describe herself, how she looks currently. So we have the ring, we have the book, and we have the snake. So ring, book, and snake. All right, so the ring tells us that she is kind of round in her body shape, blonde, she likes her bling, and she's stylish. Okay, so she doesn't go over the top with the bling, and what bling she has is very stylish. She also wears glasses, and when people look at her, they can tell that she is intelligent. She just looks intelligent. She also has very piercing eyes, and she might be described as attractive in a dangerous kind of way. She just has something about her. And then one of the questions that I chose to ask was how others would describe her personality. And I did that because sometimes it's very hard for us to tell others what we're really like, okay? Others can tell better than we can a lot of times what we're like. Sorry about that, moving those up because they were kind of off camera. So this was the question. I said, how would others describe your personality? The response here is using the bouquet, the tower, and the ring, okay? And others would describe her as gracious through the bouquet, giving, artistic, and very creative. She's also an authority figure. She is definitely somebody that has some status, which, you know, if she's kind of attractive in a dangerous kind of way, that people would probably just take her as an authority figure anyway. And the ring says that she values social connections. She likes to look for common ground with people, and she likes to work with others, and she does that well. Then, of course, we want to know in what time period she lived, and we will be using the clover, the woman, and the book for this information from her. And what she's sharing here is when you least expect it, is what that clover means. And when you are ready, you will discover that information. In other words, you'll be discovering when this ancestor actually lived. She's not being very forthcoming with that. I think she's urging you to, perhaps from the information that you get here, urging you to find out some of this information on your own. Perhaps there's something you can look up from the information that she is giving. So there's much more information to come, so keep that in mind. Then we would like to know where she lived. She's not giving us info on the time period, but perhaps she'll give us information on where she lived when she was alive. And we're going off of the last incarnation she had is where we're at, and perhaps that the two of you shared. Not necessarily, but perhaps. So for describing where she lived, we'll have the mice, the tree, and the snake. The mice are showing that she lived with others. There are a good number of mice, usually all together. She lived in nature. And it was a very personal and complicated way to live. So a little bit more with that. It is very possible that she, with a community, built kind of like a log cabin community out away from others so that they could have kind of their own commune type place. That's my thinking. So using the bouquet, the woman, and the snake, we are wanting to know, how did she pass on from that lifetime? Apparently, she was offered divine grace from the people that she lived in. Perhaps there was a church there that they attended, or perhaps even an outdoor church, and she was offered divine grace. Not exactly sure what that means, but it would be something they would know. And then there was a woman, apparently, who was not at all pleased to have that happen to her. It is something that she herself wanted, and so she poisoned your ancestor. She doesn't say how she was poisoned. Yes, it shows a snake, so it is possible. There are many different ways to poison someone. So the snake could be one of those, but we don't know for certain. So a few more things to learn about your ancestor before we move on to the other 9 cards is what she might have considered her primary occupation. And we'll use the mice, the woman, and the ring here. She's telling us that she worked with many people and that she used her intuition and her knowledge of Mother Earth and taught them ways to live, ways to stay healthy, ways to eat properly, those kinds of things. So that could also be why in the start, she said she had the authority of Mother Earth. Perhaps that authority was given to her in a dream or something like that, so that she would be able to help those people. And this was her spiritual practice, which she was extremely committed to. And I get the impression that as long as someone helped themselves, she would give them the shirt off her back. So what do you and your ancestor have in common? So for this, we're using the bouquet and the ring, the mice and the snake. In the bouquet, she says, you both use art to connect to your spiritual side, and it's beauty that inspires you. You also, both of you, honor your commitments. You also work with many people, though it is not always pleasant work, or the people aren't always as pleasant as you would like them to be. And working with those people, there can be many, many twists and turns and slippery situations that you have to deal with. But you do it. Now keep in mind, this is a general reading, and it really isn't a one-size-fits-all. Some of this will resonate with some of you, and other things will resonate with others of you. So take what works for you, and don't even worry about the rest of it. It'll all piece together on its own, maybe in your dreams, maybe through other ways. So the last question for these 9 cards here is if your ancestor has anything to add before we move on to the other 9 cards. So for this, we're using the clover, the book, the tower, and the tree. So with the clover, she's telling you to throw caution to the wind and seize the day. So perhaps you've been kind of hesitant about something here recently. Something perhaps spiritual that you've been considering, because she's telling you to dig deeper into spirituality. So seize the day, throw caution in the wind, seize the day, and dig deeper into your spirituality. Maybe there's something you've been planning to learn, maybe a class you wanted to take that you've been kind of hee-hawing about. She's telling you, go ahead. She's also telling you to aim high and work hard. And it does go together. It all goes together with these 2 cards. And she's telling you to put time and effort into developing the roots of whatever it is that you are wanting to do. Whatever class you're planning to take, whatever way you are planning to move deeper into your spirituality. She's saying, develop the roots. You have to develop the roots. Because without the roots, the tree doesn't survive, right? So those are the starting questions, kind of to get to know your ancestor. So now we're going to lay out the other 9 cards. And this will be more questions about why this ancestor has come to you. So the first question that we're going to ask is, what legacy has been passed down to you through this ancestor? Okay, so we have child, the fox, and the cross. Okay, so what legacy has been handed down to you? She's telling you to have faith. Faith is the legacy that she has passed down to you. The child card, she's saying, question all that appears to be real. And appears is, if it were in writing, it would be in bold print, okay? Question all that appears real. Be cunning, shrewd, and think outside the box. Don't get caught in the trap of thinking the way everybody else does. Think outside the box. And keep the faith. And she says, if you keep the faith, things will always work out for the best. So your legacy is faith. And then I thought perhaps you would like to know why your ancestor is with you right now. So we have the heart, we have the clover, and we have the crossroads. I'm going to move these up right now because they're a little bit bigger card than the other ones, and we'll be off the board with the next row. All right, so your ancestor is with you now, right now, to help you determine what it is that makes your heart sing. And remember, one of the things that you have in common, as shown by the other cards, was that you are both very creative people. So she wants to know what makes your heart sing. What is your biggest passion? And she wants you to grab the opportunity before it's gone. Whatever that opportunity may be, and when it approaches you. But she also wants you to know that, yes, she is sharing this information with you, and she's kind of pushing suggestions, but she wants you to remember that you always have free will and always have the right to choose the path you wish to choose. Then we need to know, what area of your life is she here to help you with? We have the mountain. We have the tree. And we have the stars. So we talked about your spiritual path. That was kind of the last info that she gave you with the other cards. And she's saying in this is that your spiritual path probably won't be an easy one. There's going to be obstacles, blockages at times. And that may be because of the subject matter in which you decide to follow. Because the tree represents your connection to different planes of existence, and it also refers to your own roots, like the roots of your ancestors, how you're connected to them. So your spiritual path is going to involve gifts as well from not just this ancestor, it sounds like, but other ancestors. And the stars shows this is where you are both currently meant to be. This is where your focus needs to lie, and hers too. So then I thought it would be nice for you to know how long your ancestor has been working with you. We're going to use the child, the heart, and the mountain. So she says that she's been with you since childhood, been working with you since childhood. You may or may not have known she was even there, but you may have felt her, some of you. She's been there with you through every passion. And this could mean relationships, this could mean creative passions, this could mean many things, educational passions, so many things. She's been there with you through all of them. And she's been with you through every obstacle, kind of pushing you and urging you to get to the top of that mountain if you can, because there is always a path on the other side of the mountain, another side to the mountain. So if you are going to know that she is here for you, it would be nice for you to know what signs she uses or will use to let you know that she is with you at the moment, at that time. So we're using the fox, the clover, and the tree for this response. And she's telling you here with the fox, again, think outside the box. She's not going to use just any old sign. She's going to probably use something that you'll be required to think a little bit. So, and she's also saying pay attention to your sense of smell, which would make sense with the fox. And she's also telling you not to overlook the small things like pennies and feathers and things like that. Things you might not ordinarily even pay attention to. Don't overlook the small things. She's saying that she might send you a random picture of a tree, especially the tree of life. And if you think about it, if you happen to be on like FB, there's always things that pop up on there. So, you know, keep an eye out for pictures of trees or just really unique looking trees, even in the outdoors, because remember, she has the authority of Mother Nature, so it doesn't have to be just a picture. So you might be wondering, what is the best way to communicate with her? And we're using the cross, the crossroads, and the stars. And she's saying that this is kind of a testing period because she needs to know what it is that you can pick up on, I suppose. Even though she's been with you since childhood, this is the first focus that you guys have had, you know, where she's letting you know that here I am and I'm ready to work with you if you're ready to work with me. So this is a testing period for communication. And she wants you to know that there's more than one way to communicate, but that it will also happen when it's meant to. Okay, so this isn't something that you can force to happen. It's something that will happen. You'll get it all of a sudden when you're supposed to get it. Could be a dream, could be just an aha moment that, wow, now I get it. Now I know how to communicate with her. And sometimes we get very impatient. Okay, there's something that we want to know, something we want to learn, something we want to do, and we get very impatient. So I thought it was important for you to know what other responsibilities besides you that your ancestor has, because remember, she's in spirit. So you may not be the only job that she has. And I'm sorry to put it that way. She probably doesn't look at you as a job. It's just the word that came out of my mouth. But she has other responsibilities, or may have other responsibilities. So let us see what she has to say about that. And we'll be using the child, the clover, and the stars here. So with the child, she's saying, she's just saying my child. An endearing term, my child. Okay. This is an unexpected opportunity. I don't think she actually thought that you would be connecting with her so soon. But this is a major opportunity and she's going to jump at it. And she's saying, yep, this is prophecy and it's destiny. Just call it fate. This is fate. So I think what she's actually saying here is that she has, since things have popped up a little sooner than expected, she will put her efforts into you at the moment and you alone. So the two of you can work together because, you know, that's how it was meant to be. It just came up more quickly than she thought it would. And sometimes when we are having communication, we oftentimes kind of doubt ourselves. And so I thought it might be important to know how you can be certain that you have understood her messages. Okay? So we'll use the cross, the clover, and the mountain. She's telling you with the cross, don't despair. If you feel like you somehow got disconnected or something doesn't seem to be the response you expected, she's telling you don't despair. Don't ever despair. Because that's just small, okay? It's just a small thing. Don't despair over the small things. And to remember that the greater the challenge, the greater the reward. And there, as she told you, you don't have an easy spiritual path, but with her, with you, it's going to be much more pleasant. More than likely, she's going to obviously let you go through what you're meant to go through, but she will be there with you. And the last thing here with the cards is whether or not she has any sage words of advice to leave you with at this point. So with that, we will use the fox, the tree, the heart, and the crossroads. So with the fox, she's saying, you're not really being honest with yourself. With the tree, you're not being honest with yourself about how your life is really going. And you might be looking at this going, I don't need anybody to help me. I'm going along just fine. But she's saying you're not being honest about how life is actually going right now. And she's saying that you need to find your passions. Because the passions are what will cause you to be successful and have you be happy while you're tending to your passions. If you're working a 9-to-5 job that you absolutely can't stand, that's not going to do it. So last, she's saying maybe it's time to try something a little bit different. So those are her words of advice here at the tail end. And, she's going to speak candidly to you. She is your ancestor. She's your bloodline. She is going to speak candidly to you. And obviously, this reading is not about the basics like money and things like that. So, she's not telling you if you have a 9-to-5 job, she's not telling you to quit your 9-to-5 job. She's saying, take a look at your life and be honest. What do you really want to do? And is it different than what you're actually doing? And if it is, take the bull by the horns whatever way you can. And if that means doing something small to start with, that has to do with that, then by all means, start small. You'll find the time because you're meant to. It's fated. 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 Prophecy, destiny. So anyway, I do hope that this ancestor reading has given you something to move forward with. And as I said, anything that doesn't work for you, just let it go and take and run with the things that do. So that's it for this reading. Until next time, take care. Hello, ancestor reading number 2. And you have chosen what I call the big-eyed cat. And these look like really cool ancestor relics that I've chosen here. And this is the relic that your ancestor has come through with. What we're going to do is have 2 layouts for this ancestor reading. I've chosen 9 cards from each deck. And This deck is, or these 9 cards are for finding out a little bit about your ancestor, and these are finding out more personal information about how you and your ancestor are working together. Keep in mind, this is a general reading. Obviously, it can't fit everyone. However, take in the little tidbits and see what works for you and what doesn't, and take what you can and disregard what doesn't work. So we're going to start out with this one. And the first thing I thought you might like to know is which ancestor is closest to you. In other words, male or female, because that just makes our conversation a little bit easier with her or him. So we have the book, we have the cross, and we have the dog. And with these 3 cards, your ancestor is not sharing with us whether she or he is male or female. What is being said is that that knowledge is yet unknown, but your ancestor wants you to know that this is karma. The 2 of you working together is karma, and that your ancestor is loyal and devoted to you. Now, it's interesting that this is how this has begun, because it is difficult for me doing the communicating between the 2 of you, that I don't have a he or a she to work with here. So let's see what happens next. We're going to find out whether your ancestor is from the maternal or paternal side of your family. So we have the clouds, we have the moon, and we have the mice. And your ancestor is saying through the cloud that they are from the paternal side of your family. And they're also sharing that something is blocking your light, blocking your reflection, or your ability to recognize this ancestor. It's kind of a loss of recognition, or, loss of memory, just needing to get that memory back of this ancestor. So you've known who they are, and perhaps you know who they are. You're just not recognizing or remembering. I thought maybe you would enjoy knowing what your ancestor looks like. So I have asked them to describe themselves to you. And we have the woman. So now we can go with she. She's telling us, I am a woman. And then we have the bear. And we have the ship. So she is female. She is rather large, strong, and burly and heavy come to mind. But she's also very exotic looking with olive skin. And then I thought it might be nice if you had an idea of her personality. But because we aren't very good ourselves with telling other people what we're like, because we just don't really tell it all. We'll put it that way. So I have asked your ancestor, how would others describe her personality? And for that, we use the book, the clouds, and the woman. So people describe her as being mysterious and cryptic, inquisitive, philosophical, and quite deep. People might be really surprised at what they find when they get to know her, because I get the impression that how she looks doesn't really fit her personality. So they are very pleasantly surprised. She's also quite eccentric. And there are many traits that go with a woman. And, she's empathetic to a point. She's intuitive. She's caring, compassionate. She can be humble. She can be thoughtful. She can be attentive. All those things are within the right quantity. We'll put it that way. And if you notice, she's looking away from how she looks. And I believe in this lifetime that she's being described here, I believe she didn't really care for how she looked, or she didn't pay a whole lot of attention to how she looked. It didn't really matter to her, which is again why I think people were pleasantly surprised when they found out what her personality was like. So then I thought you might enjoy knowing approximately what time period she was alive. And for that, we use the cross, the moon, and the bear. And with the cross, she's telling us that it was a time of a lot of hardship and grief. With the moon, it was a time of hard work and a lot of reflection. And with the bear, she says it was a time of strength and a time of taking control. So apparently at some point in life when she lived, there was not control, but then there was. Not a date, obviously, but it might mean something to you, or even if it doesn't, she's just giving you little tidbits, little bits and pieces to the best of her ability with the cards. So I asked then the question of describing where she lived, and we see the dog, the mice, and the ship. So with the dog, she's saying she was amongst really loyal and devoted friends. And they all lived together in very unclean conditions, apparently not by choice. And that this was in a foreign land to, and I'm going to say the US, where I am and where this reading is being done. So she was overseas somewhere. I then asked, how did she pass on? And we'll be using the book, the moon, and the ship for that. And with the book, she is saying this is a closed subject that she prefers not to reflect on, at least not on this particular journey. This is not what her focus is right now. So she would rather not talk about it at this time. So then I asked, what would she consider her primary occupation? And for this, we're using the dog, the moon, and the woman. She was saying that she was very loyal and devoted to her work, which, the way that it looks, it was very important for her to be recognized and for her reputation to be intact. Those were very important things, because what she was working for was womankind. So it was very important to her to be the one that people looked to and saw how devoted and passionate she was about her work for femininity, for womankind, for lady liberty, freedoms, that kind of thing for women. And then I thought it might be nice if you had some idea about what the two of you have in common. And for this, we'll use the book, the woman, the dog, and the ship. Okay? So with the book, she's saying that you are both always seeking info, always learning, always researching. This is like a huge part of things for you. And if it isn't, it probably should be. And that working with your intuition is also something the two of you have in common. And that seems to come very naturally. You both have a need to help others. Seems to kind of be in your blood. And that loyalty and devotion is very important to you. And that you both want either, or maybe both, a business of your own, and you want an adventure, kind of a magical adventure. She's right on the same page with you there. And for a little bit of last tidbit from her before we move on to the other deck, we have the cross, the bear, the clouds, and the mice. And she's saying there might be a lot of burdens. You might feel a lot of burdens. You might go through a lot of burdens. But you do have the strength to protect yourself and to protect those that you love and those things that you have. But it's the things that you love and yourself that are most important for that protection. And she says, don't let the clouds obscure your vision. You need to see the parasites, the vermin, for what they are, whoever that may be. So now we will pick these up and we will move on to the second portion of this reading. And this is a little bit more about the two of you together. First thing is, what legacy has been handed down to you? And we start with the tree, the house, and the ring. So what she's saying as the legacy, what's been passed down to you has been the deep roots of family. And if you happen to be in what you term a dysfunctional family, or you don't feel very close to your family, there are ancestors, there are roots there that you've probably never explored, or you may already have that feeling of roots. But she's saying that that is the legacy that has been passed down to you, is deep roots to your family. And those deep roots involve security, and they involve commitment. And you may already feel that or know that. And if not, she's bringing it forward in your consciousness. So why is your ancestor with you now, at this moment, at this point in time? And we have the book, we have the bouquet, and we have the coffin. And she's saying here, for some, it's about diving deeper into spiritual studies. For others, it might be organizing or compiling information. It could be writing projects. So whatever floats your boat, that is one of the reasons that your ancestor is with you right now. And your ancestor is inviting you to join her in doing something that makes you really happy. Something that you've buried deep for a long time. So you might have always wanted to write a book, but have just never done it. You may have always wanted to do major research or do something absolutely different from, maybe the job that you're doing now. And she's inviting you to say, hey, let's do it. It's been buried deep long enough. So you might want to know what area of life that your ancestor is here to help you with, which may seem like the same question, but not really. It's why is she with you now? And now it's, what area of your life is she meant to work with? She just gave you a little tidbit here. So we have the rider, we have the garden, and we have the ship. So with the rider, she is urging you to make plans and act on them. So I suppose you could say she's kind of, she's urging you to do something that, you've buried deep, something that really makes you happy, okay? And she maybe is standing behind you using, just a fun play kick to your behind. And she's urging you to get yourself out there in whatever way. Maybe you wanted to have, a special channel. Maybe you wanted to sell things online. Maybe you want a physical store. Maybe but she's telling you to get yourself out there socially somehow. And then with the ship, she's letting you know that, you need to get moving, because the only way that anything can change is if you get going. So she's urging you to do that. So she is here to urge you to find whatever it is that makes you the happiest, or to dig down and determine what it was, what hidden passion you have, okay? And then to start making plans so that you can move forward with those. And that means sharing, what you want to do with other people. Bounce ideas off of people. Not negative people who, try to tell you, you can't do it. You want to work with people or talk to people who are like all for it, right? And who are urging you on as your ancestor is. And then get moving. Get those plans into action. And now you might be wondering how long your ancestor has actually been with you. Obviously, she has all kinds of things going on here and knows you pretty well the way that it sounds. So, how long's she actually been with you? So we have the tree, we have the book, and we have the rider. And with the tree, that's saying that she has actually watched you grow. She has been there while you've gotten your education and through a lot of life lessons. So in essence, she's been with you pretty much since the moment you arrived. That's pretty awesome, actually. So you might be wondering, has she ever given you any signs, that she's with you? And, what kind of signs has she or will she be giving you so that you know that she's with you at that moment? And we're using the house, the bouquet, and the garden for that. And with the house, she's saying you might get a sudden feeling of like warmth and safety, like somebody wrapping their arms around you and just making you feel just generally really good, making you feel good about yourself. And with the bouquet, she says you might notice, pleasant odors like flowers or baked goods, something like that. And you never know what you'll get out of nature. So she's kind of urging you to, perhaps go out in nature. If you're kind of flummoxed about something, you might get a pretty awesome sign from nature. You just never know. So what would be the best way to communicate with your ancestor? And we have the ring, we have the coffin, and we have the ship. So with the ring, she says you should probably create a routine of some sort, a set time to communicate with her or connect, and to commit to that routine. With the coffin, it says that starts your awakening. And with the ship, and it starts your journey too. Your journey with your ancestor who has been with you your whole life, but you are now just coming together. And I thought it might be a good thing to ask, what other responsibilities besides you does your ancestor have? Because all of us, when we have a question or we have something we feel is urgent, we want responses right now. And sometimes our ancestors, they're in spirit, so they may have other responsibilities other than us that have to take precedence at that moment. So for this, we use the tree, the bouquet, and the ship. And what she's saying here is she has chosen to put down roots with this invitation to you. So if you accept the invitation, she is going on this journey with you. And apparently, she's going to commit specifically to you. She's putting down her roots as long as you accept the invitation. She's going to go on the journey with you. We also oftentimes, even when we get messages, synchronicities, that kind of thing, we wonder, we second guess, maybe that wasn't really what we thought it was, that kind of thing. So I thought it would be good to ask, how would you know, or how will you know that you have understood her messages? And for this, we're using the ring, the bouquet, and the rider. So with the ring, she's saying, committing to the invitation brings the messages to you. And part of that invitation, if you remember, is committing to a routine. Okay? So as long as you commit, to the invitation she's given, the messages will start to flow. So last is, does your ancestor have any words of wisdom, any message left to give you before we end this reading with them. And for that, we're using the house, the garden, the book, and the coffin. And with the house, she says, your house is your sanctuary. Now, that also includes, well, the house that you live in or where you live, but it also includes your body, okay? Those are your safe places. They're your sanctuary. They are yours and yours alone. Spend as much time in nature as you can and in the outdoors as you can per season. Open up, study, and learn as much as possible. And especially once you figure out what it is that is hiding, that you need to dig for, that you know you want to do, your passion. And with the coffin, she's just telling you to dig deep. All these things will bring you something specific, and she'll show you signs along the way. So that is it for Ancestor reading number 2. So I hope you've enjoyed the reading and that you've gathered some information that you can use. And as I said at the start of the reading, take what you can use and just disregard the rest. So until next time, take care. Hello, Ancestor 3. Welcome to your reading. This is the signifier for your ancestor. It is the offering squirrel, the cast iron squirrel. This is what your ancestor has chosen for this reading for themselves. So what we have here are two separate decks. I've chosen 9 cards from each one. The first 9 will give you some information about your ancestor, and the second will be a little more personal information about perhaps how the two of you can work together. So let's get started here. Keep in mind that this is a general reading, so not all of it is going to fit you. You may find and hear some things that make you go, whoa, okay, and other things that it'll be like, nope, doesn't work for me. So with that in mind, just take what works for you and disregard the rest. So let's get started. I did ask questions of these cards because that is the way the Lenormand cards work best. So each line plus is a response to a question from your ancestor. So the first thing I thought you might like to know is which ancestor is closest to you, and in this case it's male or female, and it doesn't really matter other than it's easier to talk about or to talk in a reading knowing male or female. So we have the whip, we have the coffin, and we have the dog. So with this, with the whip, your ancestor is male. This is a jack. Okay, so your ancestor is male, and the message that they're giving here with these 3 cards says take the challenge. Dig deep down into yourself, because they are here to support you. They will be loyal and devoted to you. Nice to know. So we need to know, or probably would like to know, whether this ancestor is on the paternal or maternal side of your family. So we have the snake, we have the mountain, and we have the letter. So the snake is the maternal side. And with this card, your ancestor is telling you this is kind of a roundabout way, kind of a twisty and turny kind of way, and that there might be a little bit of struggle here to communicate information with one another. So I thought it might be nice to know perhaps what your ancestor looked like, or maybe even looks like now. I assume it's last incarnation, but that may not be the case. This might be what they look like in spirit. So we have the sun. We have the stars. 2 luminary cards side by side. That's awesome. And we have the heart. So your ancestor is blonde, has a bright and clear complexion, and basically a picture of health and energy. Can't beat that, right? And they have very bright and twinkling eyes. And heart-shaped features. So then I thought it would be nice to know a little bit about your ancestor's personality. And because oftentimes we are not honest with ourselves about who we are when we talk to other people, I asked what others or how others would describe them. So for this one, we use the whip, the snake, and the sun. So he's saying that others would describe him as being verbally assertive, loud, combative sometimes when necessary, complex, unpredictable, a charmer, and he can appear to have an inflated ego sometimes, but he's a really charismatic extrovert. People just kind of flock to him, and he is very optimistic, very lively, and is a leader, mover and a shaker, and his energy is really contagious. So he is a great influence over people. A little history also. I thought you might like to know what time period he lived or was last alive. So we use the coffin, the mountain, and the stars here. So with the coffin, he's telling you that it was a very dark and gloomy time. And there were many challenges at that time. But he knew that it was fate. He was living that time period for a specific reason. So how about where he lived? We have the dog, we have the letter, we have the heart. So he's saying here that he lived in a place where there was loyalty, there was communication, and there was love. So even though times were tough, he lived in a very difficult time, he had good things in his life too. And with this letter, it's almost as though these were written notes or letters. This loyalty showed through with those things. So maybe he was, because of whatever was going on during that time, maybe he was in jail or prison for something. And, you know, obviously not, I wouldn't think his fault. Imprisoned unjustly, I guess I would say. And that he had those people outside who sent him letters. Or maybe he had to go into seclusion for something and could only communicate through notes. But he felt that loyalty and devotion. He felt that love. So how did your ancestor pass on? And for this one, we use the whip, the mountain, and the heart. And he's saying that there was a struggle. There was discord and there was a struggle with an enemy or someone that no matter how hard he tried, he could not work with. But the struggle was over loved ones. So he was protecting loved ones upon his death from enemies. So moving on to a little lighter note about your ancestor. What would your ancestor say was their primary occupation during this life we've been talking about? So we have the dog, we have the mountain, and we have the sun. So with the dog, we have support. He helped others reach their goals and get past their struggles. To realize their desires. To be able to make the kind of life that they always dreamed of. Quite the noble occupation. So you may wonder if none of this sounds familiar, or even if it does, you know, if you can put a feeling in there towards this ancestor, you might want to know, you know, what the two of you have in common, why this particular ancestor has come to you. What do you have in common? So we have the whip, we have the sun, we have the dog, and we have the heart. One of the things that you have in common is struggle. And that struggle is to expose the truth. And to find a friend, a devoted and loyal friend, who can share those passions with you. Being one to want to expose the truth can be a very lonely job. And to end this part of the reading, where you've been getting to know your ancestor, I asked if they had anything else to share before we moved on to the other 9 cards. So with this one, we are using the coffin, the stars, the snake, and the letter. So with the coffin, he's saying you need to dig down deep. If this is where things are going with exposing the truth, you need to dig down deep and stay really focused, because it's an incredibly twisted path, crazy path of deceitful information. So you're going to really have to dig for that information to find out where the truth lies. So let us move on to the second layout here. So I asked, what legacy has been handed down to you. And we have the anchor, the stork, and the coffin. So with this, your ancestor is saying your legacy is awakening. And it's also, this card is also hope. Hope for major change and the end of the darkness. So awakening, that's your legacy. And that can be a tough thing. The burdens can be incredibly hard, which is probably why a lot of your cards in that first reading were what would be termed negative cards. The reading was a good one, but it was full of burdens and difficulty and challenges. So the legacy is awakening, and that's a huge part of awakening. It's a tough place to be. So why is your ancestor with you now at this time? We have the lilies. We have the heart. And we have the clouds. So he's saying he's with you because you're family. And your family with intelligence and heart. But he also says that you're quite fixated on a specific path, and that's kind of obscuring your vision a bit. So what area of your life is your ancestor here to work with you on? We have the bear. We have the mountain. We have the sun. So he's saying strength and power. He's here to help you understand strength and power so that you can overcome obstacles or reach the top or the peak of the mountain that you've been climbing. Because there's a big success waiting for you. Big success and a lot of illumination. Well, there's been a good bit of information just with that. But you might want to know, obviously he is communicating a lot of things here. How long has your ancestor been with you? And we're using the anchor, the lily, and the bear. So he's saying this is where he dropped his anchor. With you, because you're family. And he wants to add his strength and his protection. And to add a little bit extra, he's been with you for a little over a year. So you might want to know what types of signs that your ancestor gives you or will give you to let you know that they are with you at a specific time. And we're using the stork, the heart, and the mountain. And the stork is saying when you notice big changes or you become aware of big changes, you may feel something in your heart. Perhaps your heart will flutter or it'll pound a little bit. Or maybe you will come across something made from a heart, like a heart-shaped leaf or a heart necklace or something along those lines. And try not to make it a huge mountain to climb. In other words, don't be looking for impossible things. Look for simple things. Those are the kinds of signs he will give, and probably already has. Very simple signs, but they will have to do with a heart or something about the heart. Maybe it'll be a specific beat to a song that reminds you of a heartbeat, that kind of thing. And perhaps knowing what the best way to communicate with him will be. We're using the coffin, the clouds, and the sun. So with the coffin, he's saying, don't do anything except use your imagination, because that will illuminate your communication and allow you to actually see the signs. Sometimes when we know we have help, we don't have a problem utilizing the talents of that help. So I thought it might be important to know if our ancestor has any other responsibilities besides us. So in this case, does your ancestor have any other responsibilities besides you? And we are using the anchor, the heart, and the sun. And he says that he is anchoring his love and his energy right here with you. So he is not taking on any other responsibilities in spirit at this time. He is working with you, and that's how it's been for the last year or so, a bit over a year. And you might want to know how you will know if you've actually understood his messages. And for this, we're using the coffin, the heart, and the bear. And he says, this is actually the greatest problem. Your desire to understand can give you the power to do this. And he says it's the greatest problem because you think it's an obstacle. You're afraid you won't see clear enough. However, he is saying, not true, it's your desire. You're wanting to understand his messages that will give you the power to do so. So the last thing to ask here is if your ancestor has anything else to share with you before the reading is over here. And for this, we're using the stork, the mountain, the lily, and the clouds. And he is saying that change, this huge evolution, huge changes, is an obstacle. But that family, himself included, can offer you good direction as long as you're not afraid to ask. So he's saying, please, no matter what the obstacle, because, all these changes are bringing huge things to many, huge mountains to climb, or at least that's how it feels. And he's telling you that family can offer you good support, good vision. But if you don't ask, they don't know what you're seeking or what you need. So make sure that you aren't afraid to ask for help. Ask for advice. Ask for whatever it is that you need. You don't necessarily have to take the advice you're given, but it might give you a whole new perspective. It might allow you to see more clearly. It might allow things to be a little more illuminated for you. it might make this mountain a little smaller. So that's it for this reading with Ancestor 3 people. So I hope you enjoyed it and that something within it has sparked you. And as I said, take what you can from the readings and disregard the rest. So until next time, take care. Hello, Ancestor reading number 4. Here we have your ancestor's symbolic piece. It is a bat. And I thought that was quite amazing, quite beautiful. Bats are very noble creatures. So what we're doing here today, we have 2 different decks. I've chosen 9 cards from one, 9 cards from the other. And with the first 9 cards, we will learn a little bit of something about your ancestor. And with the second, we'll learn a little bit more about how you will be working with your ancestor. So this is a general reading, and it is also a timeless reading. When you see it is when you are meant to see it. So with a general reading, obviously not everything is going to fit everyone. So take what you can from the reading and just disregard the rest. What is supposed to spark you will spark you. So what we want to know first is what ancestor is closest to you. And when I say this, we're asking specifically, are they male or female? Because throughout this reading, they will be referred to as he or she or ancestor. So it's a good thing to know. So we start with the birds, the coffin, and the scythe. And the scythe tells us that your ancestor is male. And the message that he is sharing here is that he feels like you have some mental nervousness, some agitation going on, something really bothering you, and that needs to stop. Whatever the issue is needs to be dealt with, like right now, immediately, so that you are not in this agitated state. And you may not feel like you're in an agitated state, but maybe it's showing up in other ways. So is your ancestor from the maternal or paternal side of your family? And we have the stork, we have the tower, and we have the garden. So apparently your ancestor, your male ancestor, is from the maternal side, your mother's side of the family. And the message given with these 3 cards is he's saying that it's time to evolve, because it seems that there's been some intentional or forced solitude going on, perhaps a little of both. And that needs to evolve into getting back into something social. He feels that that's quite important for you. So what, we know he's male, and we know he's from your mother's side of the family. So what does he look like? What does your ancestor look like? And we have the cross, the fox, and the whip. Now keep in mind, these questions were asked before the cards were ever laid or chosen. So these answers are coming from your ancestor. So he says he is a little stern looking, but with a little hint of sadness. He is a redhead. He has a very prominent nose. He's not built very big and possibly has a little bit of slump to the shoulders, kind of as though there's been a lot of burden placed upon him. And sometimes he wears dark glasses. And he's a runner. So then I thought it might be kind of nice for you to have an idea of what kind of personality your ancestor has. Only because we aren't always all that honest ourselves about our personalities when we're talking to other people, I thought maybe the best way to ask this question would, how would others describe his personality? And we're using the birds, the stork, and the cross for this. So he says others would describe him as quick moving, probably a little bit scattered. He's very quick to change his mind if he needs to be. In other words, he thinks on his feet. He's adaptable. He's flexible. Kind of restless, but he loves change and he loves variety. He also sees life as kind of a quest or a pilgrimage, despite whatever hardships take place. So now let's find out what time period he lived. And this would be like his last incarnation, I think. Or it could be the last incarnation he had with you. I'm not sure which. You may feel this yourself. So let's see what he has to say. We're using the coffin, the tower, and the fox for this one. So he says it was a time of great loss. It was a time of regulations and restrictions and a lot of authority. And it was a time when things were very wrong, and a time of survival and self-interest. And when he says self-interest, he's not talking about being selfish. He's talking about caring for himself and his loved ones. So in this time where things were so difficult, where did your ancestor live? We're using the scythe, the garden, and the whip. He said he was cut off from society, from community, or perhaps everyone was. And that was also cut off from food. And that everything, being able to get anything, everything was a struggle. So that meant, I suppose, having a place to live and, a place to eat and gather and any of that. So how did he pass on? And we use the birds, the tower, and the whip. He says there was a lot of nervous talk, gossip, and because of it, he went into seclusion, but the authorities came. He says there was a struggle, and then his words were, the drama ended. So apparently it was something that had to do with, people that he lived around, something that he did apparently got them all nervous and they turned him in. So on to a bit more of an upbeat note. What did your ancestor feel? What did he feel was his primary occupation? And for this, scythe, tower, cross. So he says, warning others of danger, hiding others away, and carrying the cross. So as we talked about when we were talking about his description, you remember I said his shoulders might be a little bit slumped because of the crosses that he had to bear. He took that upon himself. Even though, survival and self-interest, he took care of his family and he took care of himself, but he just couldn't turn his back on other people. So that was his job, is taking care of others also. So you may be wondering also, this ancestor is with you, but what is it that you have in common? What brings you together? What do you have in common? And we're using birds, cross, scythe, and whip here. So he says you have nervousness due to expectation in common. You're maybe always expecting the worst, makes you nervous. Always expecting a specific outcome makes you nervous. He says he's like that too. Trials and tribulations, he's been through them. You're going through them. There's a lot of severing of ties with people that thought you knew. He has had to do that as well. And there's struggle. So those are the things that you have in common, and the reason that he is the ancestor that came forward for you, because he's been through all these things already in another time period, but he's been through it. Does your ancestor have another or any information or any message for you before we move on to the other 9 cards? And for this one, we're using the coffin, the fox, the stork, and the garden. So he says, there will be an end to everything that is so wrong. And major change will happen. And society will come together again. People will come together again. And I think that was a pretty nice message to share, a hopeful message, or something he sees, perhaps, from Spirit. So the second set of cards here, as I said, is a little bit more information about how your ancestor will work with you. That's pretty much the best way I can describe it. So the first question was, what legacy has been handed down to you? We have the lily. We have the woman. And we have the letter. So the legacy that's been handed down to you is a gift, and it's a gift from family. And you are actually looking, or the woman card is looking at the lily, which is family. This gift is of the writer, the storyteller, the historian. Words are the gift. Words are your legacy. And that is something that has been passed down through your family. It may not have always been used, for some reason or another, but that is the legacy that you have received from your ancestors, from your family. So why is your ancestor here with you now at this time? We have the whip, we have the garden, and we have the mountain. So he's saying he's with you now because of the discord and the struggle from the events and from enemies. He's here to help you get yourself together before attempting to move forward. If you have that on the last reading with the smaller cards, if you remember, he started out saying, that nervousness, it has to go. It has to be handled immediately. So he is here to help you work with that. So even though it seems kind of like the same question, I then asked, what area of your life is your ancestor here to help you with? And we have the man, we have the book, and we have the sun. And so he's saying the man, and this would be in quotes, another word for those who have been brought to power by us. Okay, the man. And then we have the book. These are facts that are hidden, facts that are missing, that aren't being shared with us by the man. Okay? And he's here to help improve this. This card, the sun, exposes the secrets and allows everything to be seen clearly. And since it's the book and your legacy is words, you may have a great deal to do with exposing those hidden secrets somehow. Then I thought you might like to know how long this ancestor has been with you. And for this, we'll use the lily, the whip, and the man here. So he says a long time. He's been with you a long time. Because since this is a repeat of a really difficult time, the difficult time he lived, and those difficult times, just like before, are due to the man. So he's been with you, preparing you, getting ready for this specific time period to help you through. So I thought it might be important for you to know what types of signs that he gives you or will give you to let you know that he is with you at any specific time and at any specific moment. And for that, we use the woman, the garden, and the book. He says, follow your intuition. Pay attention to things that are being shared socially, because those things, the things shared socially, also, disclosures that you'll hear from different sources, and just different things that will all of a sudden be on display. you'll notice them because he'll make sure you notice them. Any kind of whispered secrets, words in books. He's going to throw a lot of different things at you, and most of them will have to do with words, so that you know they are coming from him, because that is your legacy. Words are your legacy. So you might hear something on a movie. You might hear something from a friend. You might hear something on the radio. You might hear something from a family member. Please excuse the noises you may be hearing in the background. My chihuahua is having a hissy fit because I'm not paying attention. Sorry. Okay, so what is the best way to communicate with your ancestor? We use the letter, the mountain, and the sun. He says, through words, both orally and written. He says you'll probably struggle somewhat at first, but not to give up. Because the sun shows that you will be successful in communicating with him, and things will become a lot clearer the more you practice. So what comes to mind here, for me anyway, is something that I used to do as a child. I would ask a question, write it out with my primary hand, which is my right hand, and respond to myself with my left. I learned how to write with both hands due to a surgery that I had, but that's what it kind of reminds me of. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to change hands. I did that as a kid because I felt like one side of my brain understood a certain thing and the other side would have the correct information for that. So that could be an idea for you for possible communication, maybe how he's saying. But he says orally and written, so you can speak to him too, but then perhaps he will respond to you either orally, maybe not at first until you get used to hearing him, but through the written word, as like in a book or words you see on a license plate, that kind of thing. Now, one thing I thought was really important is that when we know we have assistance, when we need something or want something or need an answer to something, we kind of want it now. So I thought it might be important to ask our ancestor, your ancestor, what other responsibilities besides you they have. Because remember, they're in spirit and they very well may have another job, not just you. So here we have the lily, the garden, and the sun. And what he's saying here is you, as his family, are his community. And that fulfills his quota right now. Cute way to put that. Very cute way to put that. So you may wonder, if you notice these things, these messages that he's given you, how are you going to know that you have understood his messages? Here we're using the letter, the garden, and the man. Okay? So he says here, you will receive information, and it'll be written, typed, spoken, could be sign language, from a medium, that kind of thing. Okay? Synchronicities, in other words, that's what he's talking about. And the synchronicities could be through social events, media, people, just like we talked about here. He's sharing with you, kind of double sharing with you that here it is. And it'll be pretty much the man stories. Remember what we said about the man, who that is. So you're going to know, because the messages that you are going to receive, at least for a while, until things change, until some kind of major change takes place with how things are right now, most of what you're going to hear is going to do with the man and the secrets that need to be illuminated. So that is one way you will know that you are receiving the messages that he is giving. So we have one more opportunity here for him to share a message with you, and we will use the woman, the book, the whip, and the mountain. So he says, follow your intuition. Seems to be a very huge message. Follow your intuition. And you might be able to see she has a rose up to her heart, which almost looks like a heart. So I'm going to say, follow your intuition, follow your heart. As you investigate and research. Realize that you may not see eye to eye with other people if you verbally share. But remember that this is just a speed bump. It is not the mountain you see here. Don't let not seeing eye to eye with someone stand in your way from getting the information you need and getting the information out there to wherever you determine it needs to go. So, Ancestor reading number 4, that is it for this reading. Again, take what you can from it and disregard the rest. But hopefully this has given you a little bit of a niggle as to your ancestor and who they are. Doesn't mean they will totally match what we're given here, but because they are kind of limited by the cards and my understanding of the cards. But take what you can from it, and hopefully it will give some insight for you. So until next time, I thank you for viewing. Take care.